Hi everyone, and welcome back to another segment of Let's Chat, when we're here talking about our resources from Leading Learning. I'm Gillian Stephen.
I'm Adrian Anderson.
And today we are going to be talking about assessment on a day-to-day basis. So my name's Gillian Stephen, as I've said, and I am the Twinkl Scotland Primary Segment Manager, which means I look after a range of products and make sure that everybody knows about them. So whether that's through the emails that we send out to you on a Sunday, or through social media, or just making connections with partnerships, that all kind of comes under my job. And Leading Learning is one of the content lines that I help look after. But it is run by the wonderful Adrian Anderson, who I'll pass over to let him introduce himself.
Thanks, Gillian. Hi, I'm Adrian. I am the educational content lead for the Leading Learning content line at Twinkl Scotland. So my job is to oversee the strategic part of the content line, making sure that we're producing resources that are going to support you in the classroom. And as Gillian mentioned today, it's great to come along today to share some of our work on assessment, in particular day-to-day assessment that goes on in your classrooms.
Excellent. And I think it's really interesting the way that we can have these discussions. So I myself, I've got 17 years primary teaching experience, very much on the class side. But you, Adrian, you were kind of upper level from myself, weren't you? You were a head teacher for years. And I think being able to have discussions from both sides of the job and from the career is really important. How long were you a head teacher for?
I was head teacher for 10 years, Gillian. Yeah.
And as class teacher for how long?
Class teacher. So I qualified 21 years ago. So yeah.
Just a young thing.
Well, I don't feel it.
I think I was 18. I think I was 18 years ago I qualified. So it's, the less said about that, the better. I think we should not talk about years. Plenty of experience here to talk about assessment on a day-to-day basis. So I think we should really just go straight into the actual document that we want to talk about today, because it's so helpful and there's so much in it that this could take forever. But I'll start sharing so that you can see what it looks like.
So we're going to be talking about day-to-day assessment, and basically that's formative assessment that we're basically focusing on. And formative assessment, like summative assessment, it is about gathering information relating to a learner's progress. But the thing about formative assessment is the point at which that information is gathered that makes it different, because formative assessment is this day-to-day assessment strategies where we are gathering information in the now. It's about undertaking some task or a technique or observation where we're gathering information on what a learner's understanding is at that point when we're gathering that information. And as a teacher, that gives you such a valuable insight into their understanding or misconceptions, if they need support, if they're ready for challenge. And I think as a teacher personally, I got a bit stuck in the same, probably boring, if you ask my learners, assessment strategies. I rattled the same ones off all the time. And I think it's just good that we've got this document here that's going to help you mix it up and keep it a bit more alive for your learners.
Keep it fresh. I think that's so important. Yeah. And I think as well, if you can get stuck in ones that work, but then you can get a different cohort of kids and that particular strategy doesn't work well with them. So I almost see this as like your toolkit, like what have you got in your arsenal? What different ways can you assess things in the here and now, as you were saying, and just keeping it going. So we've created this document, and the first few pages of it is like a tracker almost, so you can give it a little tick if it's something you've tested, maybe write in the date of when you tested it, when you tried it out, and then there's a space at the side for a comment on them as well of this worked really well, or this worked for X learner, but Z learner really didn't. This didn't help that child. And you can keep like notes on how that's going to work for you for your class. Again, this is great, not just for newly qualified teachers who maybe haven't heard of some of these or haven't tried them, but also for teachers who've been teaching for years. And you've probably done these and not realised that it's an assessment strategy or a technique, and didn't realise the proper name. And you'll be able to find ways to tweak them and make them suit your own. So as you can see, they're in alphabetical order, and there are loads. There are 2 pages worth here that you can try out. But to make it easier for you, the next few pages then go through them all, explain them, explain how you can do it and what you need to do. So I had a few that I would have used. I loved a lollipop stick back in the day. Everyone loves a lollipop stick, whether you're just picking them out or you can be using them alongside some of these strategies. Things like the discuss words here. So during discussions, take a deeper look in at the keywords. How are they being used? Does everybody actually understand them? And is everyone using the word in the same way? I think that's a really important one. You can be talking and using language and just assuming that the children know what you're talking about. But if you don't look at the keywords and the terminologies behind these things and making sure they actually have an understanding of them. So I would just be stopping mid-lesson and saying, well, I've just said this. What is your understanding of it? Reading comprehension. Do they know what comprehension means? Have they got the understanding to then go and have the understanding of the text that they're reading? Do they know what I'm looking for? And that comes back to your learning intentions and success criteria. But these assessment strategies are what you're using to ensure that they are hitting these intentions and criteria. What else have we got?
So that would just be like a few caveats that I would say is that to use these strategies successfully, your learning intentions and your success criteria need to be spot on if learners are going to be able to identify what they've learned. And the success criteria is, can your learners actually identify how they have been successful in their learning? So, the step before that would be your learning intentions, success criteria. As we talked about in our last chat, I was
about to say, go back and watch the moderations video. We talk about that in detail.
For these assessment strategies to be successful, the learning intentions and success criteria need to be spot on, or else I feel that some of these just become a gimmick that you use with the children, and it can't be a gimmick. That's
what I was going to say. I think it's really important that they get comfortable with some of them as well. It's important to try some of them out, but they also need to know what's coming. They need to understand how you're using them. And so, yes, it's a balance, isn't it, of not getting stuck in using the same strategies all the time, but also that the children understand why you're doing what you're doing. And it's not just a silly, as you said, a gimmick. I think this is a really important one as well, the KWL grids. I use them quite extensively at the beginning of a session of lessons, or the beginning of like a topic, for lack of a better word. And you talk a lot about them when we were talking about the curriculum improvement cycle. Do you want to talk about how you would use these?
And I think what you said there is that people tend to use this for IDL and topic. What do the children know about fractions at the start of a block of learning?
I was going to say, I use them a lot in maths.
Yeah.
I use them in maths.
And again, it's like, what do they know at the start? What do they want to know? But it's important that the learners then come back to it at the end of a block. Like, what have you learned? Look at what you recorded beforehand. It's that, that full process of going through it. But as the curriculum improvement cycle is addressed, it's not what do children know, but we really need to think about, right, they know this, they need to know this, the knowledge part's so important. What do they understand? And, and maybe now you want to add an extra part thinking about meta skills. So how are you going to do it? What skills are you going to implement to do it? So you could take these and, you can expand them, you can adjust them, you can make it suit the particular lesson that you're doing. Because, a KWL for a block of learning in maths may look really different for an IDL topic where you're thinking more about, right, you've got this knowledge and skills to demonstrate your understanding. How is that going to look? The other thing would be, some of these like comment only marking and so on, formative assessment strategy is quite teacher focused. So there's some that will be very self-assessment where the children assess their own progress. There's some that will be more suited to that peer assessment. And I think that's important is because we really want our learners to be involved in their learning. And this is one way through formative assessment that we can really get our learners talking the language of learning and how that looks in your classroom. It's not just the teacher who may only make a comment on your piece of work. How does that look through self and peer assessment in your classrooms? Are they annotating their work? Are they using highlighters, you know, to highlight the green for growth or the tickled pinks, whatever strategies you've used before? And then that word underneath that comment, only one is the communication. If you do these things in your classroom, you need to open the communication. And with classes I've had, it's almost taken a bit of time and training to get the learners using the language of learning. So again, you know, when you work through, I think that list at the start is so important, because you may come across some and say, you know, the learners really struggled with this one. You may have to do some, you know, groundwork before they're using a certain strategy successfully. And I think that's so important. The time spent on that is so important, because it does take away that gimmicky aspect of it, as we've mentioned before.
We've created a pack that will maybe help with that kind of communication side. So I'll share that just now. It's the Day-to-Day Formative Assessment Strategies Pack. And when you download that, you'll find that document that we've just discussed earlier, but you'll also find things that you can actually actively use with your class. So there's these reflective prompts, which really get the kids thinking about what they have learned. We would call these an exit ticket, and I use these quite a lot with upper stages classroom before they left for lunchtime, before they left to go out a break, before they left at the end of the day. They had to kind of answer these questions. Now, these can easily be done on Post-it notes, but the way that these ones have been created, it's really given those prompts for you so that they know what they're talking about. They're not, what was your favourite thing today? Maths. What was your lunch? And just writing a really quick thing. There's not any reflection really going into that. Well, why was it the most important thing you learned today, and why? So what is the most difficult thing you learned today? So what were your struggles? Like, what do you know that you need to work on more? And then something funny, because everybody just needs a little bit of light relief as it goes on. And the way that these have been done, that you've got many on a page just so that it's easier when you are photocopying. And there's a few different options with different prompts. So one thing I could teach someone after today, and I think that's really important. If you can teach it to someone else, then your understanding of it must be much better than if it was just something you'd learned that day. And what can I do when I'm stuck and the teacher is busy? So again, just getting them thinking about how they are responsible for their own learning. And then something that puzzles me, but as I say, there's like 4 on each page, so that it's easier for you to print and photocopy, cut them up, or you could even just put the prompts up on the board and people can do them on Post-it notes, because print budgets, let's face it, they're always something to be thinking about.
And that's the thing, it's that plenary at the end of the lesson, which, you know, you normally look at the clock and think, oh my goodness, it's 12:25, it's 5 minutes to lunch. Right, everyone stop, go, let's get our hands washed. Yeah. You know, have this ready, maybe just on the board, just one question. But right, before we do that, here's the question we've got up on the board, quickly write in a Post-it note or a comment at the bottom of the jotter, or turn to your shoulder partner and tell them, you know, something as quick, as simple as that. And, you know, and as the teacher, you know, if they're having that discussion, you can go around and just listen in and maybe quickly look at the comments that the pupils are writing. And it's that encouraging them to take much more responsibility for their learning is so important. And ultimate, sorry, Gillian, like ultimate question for me is that I would always ask learners, what is your next step in learning? And you want to get children to the point where they will just be saying, oh, my next step in learning in this block of numeracy, whatever it is you're doing, is this. You're wanting children to be able to answer that confidently. So if you ask the children in your class, what is your next step in learning in whatever area, if they struggle to answer that, that's, you know, that would be the ultimate aim, is that they could just straight away tell you what it is. And that takes a bit of time using these strategies. And I think that's the important thing, is getting to that step. We're not just using these as a quick gimmick.
And I think the ones that we're showing just now, these are possibly better with your upper level classes, because there's quite a lot of writing involved in them. And that, if you, as you say, if it's 25 past and you don't have time, another one that's involved in this pack might be this: what have I learned today? Much quicker, but it is still quite this is still quite a bit of writing for some children who might struggle to get to access this. But we've got ones like this as well, the self-assessment selfie, where they can do it pictorially, or they can still write within that little bit. That's maybe a little bit easier for children who have additional support needs, don't have the time to write, or as we've said, it's 25 past, nobody's washed their hands and you're running late and you need something just a little bit quicker. I think there's one more as well. This one definitely can just be done on Post-its, but I'll share it with you anyway. What stuck with you today? And then really reflecting on that. Well, why did that stick with you? Does that tell you something about what you're good at? Does that tell you something about what you need to work at? Thinking always reflectively and thinking about these next steps. And I do think it is important, because I think I mentioned lollipop sticks, and what class didn't have everyone's name written on a lollipop stick, and they would pull them out and it just became, as you say, it's so gimmicky. And why are you doing it? Why are you as a teacher doing this strategy? And I think that's really important to understand the why behind these strategies, instead of just, I've got my lollipop sticks, I've got my talking partners, I've got my Post-it notes to do a quick exit ticket because I've ticked these boxes. Why are you doing it? Are you looking at these and then using them to feed into your next lesson? And that's how it becomes your day-to-day assessment strategies. Are you keeping them somewhere so that you can use them when you're doing your report writing? Because there's nothing worse than getting to report writing season and going, I've got nothing about how this child personally feels about their learning. I know what I think about them, but how do they feel about their learning journey?
Absolutely. And it's the same with the, you know, thumbs up, thumbs down, red, amber, green traffic lights, you know, and there'll be children that, you know, it's taking it to that next stage, right? You know, because you'll have children in your class, the teacher expects me to have green, I'm going to put green, you know. And again, it's teasing all of that out to make sure that, you know, the ethos and the time spent on this is where we're actually, you know, I hate using that word training, but, you know, we're allowing the children to see that, you know, it's okay to have a red, it's okay to have an amber, it's okay.
It's modelling, isn't it? If you, as a teacher, have said, well, this is something I find tricky, and being showing that language is okay, showing that it's okay to be stuck, and that using these tools to help yourself and making them accessible to all children. And that's as we're going to go on a different tangent now about support materials and things that are accessible to children. There might be some of these assessment techniques that will only work with a group of children within your class, that you reserve it for their use, for their learning, and making sure that the learning is accessible to everybody, and that everyone feels comfortable and confident enough in your classroom to ask for the support that they need.
And I mean, it may be that, you know, you already use some, but, you know, what do your colleagues use? Do you want to come to a point where you've got a agreed sort of set across the school? So when learners move from class to class, they're aware that this is the same strategy, there's the same expectation with this formative assessment strategy. So, you know, that's a decision for individual schools to make, you know, on, right, if we're looking at formative assessment, how does it look currently? What strategies are successful? What does the language of learning look like across the school? And if you've not already watched our previous one, go back to the moderation one, because, you know, it comes back to that again, that consistent understanding across the school, which will really help learners as they transition from class to class.
Excellent. Well, listen, thank you again, Adrian, for joining us today and talking with us about the resources that you're creating for day-to-day assessment. We're going to do a few more videos on different parts of assessment, so please stay tuned and watch out for those. In the meantime, make sure you're following us on Twinkl Scotland, whether you are on Facebook, Instagram or TikTok. You will find at Twinkl Scotland over there, where you will find more of these resources and lots of other more exciting things. But in the meantime, thank you for joining us for a chat, and we will see you all soon. Thank you, Adrian.
Thanks. See you soon, everyone.